Hammertime!
You better get hype, boy.
Anyways, so we are doing some more Gauntlet Modern for you. And now, originally, I know I promised you either Cobra or Bushy Tenderfoot, but you guys in the comments suggested some really fast combo decks to play against in this new Gauntlet series. So I thought, why not have a fast fest? So I'm going to bring my fastest deck that I have, which is Hammertime. So this deck is trying really hard to win on turn 2 with a massive swing from a Colossus Hammer, and most of the cards in the deck are designed to accomplish that goal. So I have these actually sort of sorted by what they do instead of converted mana cost, so we'll start at the bottom here. Here we have our full roster of creatures that are capable of killing in one hit with a Colossus Hammer attached. We have Kor Duelist. It's a 1/1 that it's just a 1/1, but if he's equipped with something, he has Double Strike. Colossus Hammer, of course, +10/+10. That puts him to 11. That's a swing for 22. Dead. Then we have 4 Glistener Elf. Infect. So you only need to deal 10.
It's a 1/1.
10 + 1. That's 11. Dead. Inkmoth Nexus. Same thing. This one flies. It's a little harder to kill on turn 2, but you can do it with Simian Spirit Guide as well. But yeah, so Inkmoth Nexus turns into a 1/1 flying infect. You can attack for 1, and then if you have some way of flashing the hammer into play, like a Sigarda's Aid, then they can't even block that one. So
yeah, you can attack.
Yeah.
Oh, they can't block. Now I'll put the hammer out.
Yep. So then we have a line of ways to attach equipment for very cheap. So we have 3 Sigarda's Aids. This one allows you to cast aura and equipment spells as though they had flash, and whenever one enters the battlefield, you can attach it to a creature you control. So if you go turn 1, any of these guys, turn 2, Aid, Hammer, dead. Magnetic Theft. Similar idea. It's an instant speed. Attach target equipment to target creature. Also worth noting, it doesn't specify that you control or that your opponent controls or anything like that. So you can actually do some other shenanigans with this, like if your opponent's playing like a Sword of Feast and Famine or something, just take it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't keep the equipment, but you shift
you move it to your creature.
You shift who it's attached to.
Yeah.
That can be fun.
Mm-hmm. Which is also hilarious in mirror matches, because then you just let them play the hammer and you just take it from... Yep, so that's another way. Again, turn 1 Duelist, turn 2 Hammer Theft.
Yes, and again, it's an instant, so you can attach it after blockers.
Yes.
For the Inkmoth Nexus.
Mm-hmm. And then we have the most expensive way to attach things for cheap. Kor Outfitter costs 2 mana. And it's a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you may attach target equipment you control to target creature you control. So most of the time you're trying to, and to get a turn 2 kill with this guy, you're probably going to need a Simian Spirit Guide for the extra mana. But basically, Kor Outfitter, you're going to want to put this on one of these. But if you can't, he can always wear it himself. So he sort of doubles as like a not as good creature, but it's still a 12/12.
2-hit kill, but...
It's still a 2 mana 12/12.
Yeah, it's still 2 mana 12/12.
That's pretty good. Yeah, so he sort of runs a little double duty in that sense. And then up here, we have ways to find hammer/hammer itself, because you don't need to find it if you have it. So we have 4 copies of Stoneforge Mystic. This is a very good card, just generally speaking. It can also fetch up a Batterskull, but we'll get to that. But mainly, it fetches up Colossus Hammer, and it gets you around counter magic. A card that's really popular right now, of course, is Chalice of Void. Chalice on 1 kind of screws most of this deck, but if you have the Stoneforge Mystic plan, doesn't matter. You can still get around it. You can like Stoneforge Kor Outfitter.
Yeah, or Inkmoth Nexus.
Yeah. Tons of ways.
You can make it work with that.
Yeah, even though it counters almost everything else. So yeah, don't want to face that card. Then we have 3 Steelshaper's Gift. So it's a 1 mana sorcery. Search your library for an equipment, put it into your hand. So of course you can fetch either of these 2. And then we have the hammers. So normally it costs 8 to equip, but we're not paying 8.
Yeah, the whole deck is. Yeah. We're just going to ignore that line of text. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah. But it is also worth noting, Colossus Hammer, you lose flying. The only time that comes into play is if you have bad timing on your Inkmoth Nexus. Like if you have to equip the hammer at sorcery speed.
Yeah, like if you have to use Kor Outfitter, it does slow it down.
It does ground him, but it still might be enough, because that is still presenting lethal in 1 attack. Yeah. So then at the top here, we have our Plan B / other supplementary cards. So we have 4 Simian Spirit Guides. Again, we want really bad to kill on turn 2, and this makes that a lot more consistent. Because if you have the mana to do that, then any of these combinations will work on turn 2.
Normally you do have exactly enough mana, with turn 1 being a 1-drop, turn 2 being...
If that's your line.
Yeah, like Hammer, Sigarda's Hammer, Magnetic Theft, something like that.
But if you have to throw in like a Steelshaper's Gift into the mix or something like that somewhere.
That way the Simian Spirit Guide can help for that.
Yeah, and it basically, most of the time, it just casts the hammer because it's red. But you can also Magnetic Theft out of nowhere, which is pretty cool. Like if your opponent thinks you're tapped out and they go for some shenanigans, you're like, nope, now I'm wearing a hammer.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Then we have 4 copies of Boros Charms. This is a fun one. It deals 4 damage to target player, which, that's fine.
That's the effect that most often gets used in other decks.
Yeah, not so much this one. I mean, you can, if you're like going for just the 12-12 attacks or something like that, that might be enough to finish your opponent off. But mainly, you want to make permanents you control indestructible, which is a pretty good one. If your opponent has like a way to deal with your massive threat and you have 2 mana up, just make it indestructible. And that's usually good enough to keep it around. But the main ability, well, I guess the other main ability, is to give a creature double strike. So these obviously don't need it with the hammer, but if you have the hammer on a Kor Outfitter or Stoneforge Mystic or Simian Spirit Guide even.
Somehow that ends up being the
if somehow that ends up being a thing. Giving it double strike, well, that's still a kill.
It's still a kill, so.
A little slower, but it's there, and it has the other 2 options, which makes that card quite good in this list. And then we have 2 copies of Batterskull, so this is really the Plan B. If your opponent is somehow able to deal with your hammer shenanigans, Batterskull's kind of hard to deal with.
Yeah, Batterskull, with Stoneforge Mystic, you can keep making 4/4s over and over again.
Yeah, and if they try and deal with it, and you have 3 mana up, they're not going to deal with it, because you can just return to your hand. Then lands, we already talked about Inky. We have 2 Sacred Foundries, 2 Temple Garden, 1 Stomping Ground, 1 Plains, and then a ton of fetch lands. So there's only 20 lands in this deck, because, I mean, the most expensive thing I have, other than this, which is mana, and this, which gets cheated into play, is 2. So, pretty cheap deck.
Don't need mana.
Don't need mana. But we do have the Inkmoth Nexuses as well. So, yeah, 20 in total. Tons of fetch lands because we don't want to draw our lands necessarily. We just want 2 or 3, and that's it. Yeah. So, that is Hammertime. And as I said, this is going to be now going into a gauntlet where it's going to face 3 other net decks. All sort of tier 1 strategies that are really fast. So, stay tuned for that.
Why?